Battle Through the Heavens, Episode 200. At the end of the previous episode, when Hun Jing and his companion saw Yao Dan charge at them with full force, their expressions turned cold and they counterattacked, throwing the sky into chaos. A brutal battle erupted, shaking the heavens as the fight raged. The Yao clan elders rushed in and self-detonated at the same location, violently distorting space. Under the massive energy assault, black flame symbols seeped out and finally shattered. The instant they broke, pink flames surged from Xiaoyan, forming a fire barrier that trapped Yao Tian, Yao Ling, and others, while the Northern King shielded Yao Lao, pushing their speed to the limit. Xiaoyan's group raced toward the torn space at lightning speed. Bang! Bang! A thunder-like explosion continuously resounded within this realm. Following the appearance of each explosion, there would be an expert from the Yao clan exploding the Du Qi within his body and blast himself into pieces. In the face of such a wild and violent energy attack, even one's soul would not remain. Xiaoyan's group unleashed their speed to their limit as they crazily rushed towards the area where the explosions were most centralized. The seal at that spot had already been blasted apart. It would no longer be difficult to tear open the space. Those experts from the various sects were also closely following behind Xiaoyan. They understood that it was impossible for them to successfully escape alive by relying on their own strength in such a chaotic period. However, the Han clan's aim was to eliminate all the living creatures within the Yao clan. It was naturally impossible for them to simply allow Xiaoyan and the others to leave. While Xiaoyan's group traveled, the tooling creatures covering the entire area, as well as the experts from the Han clan, had immediately changed their target. They rushed and surrounded Xiaoyan's group from all directions. Xiaoyan's expression turned cold after seeing the figures, which were rushing over from all directions. He was just about to attack when old man Shen Nong from behind threw the medicinal herb's walking stick in his hand. Immediately, a green sea of flame spread rapidly. It emitted some swish sound as countless of towering trees appeared. Those huge trees with flame surrounding them were like vines that entwined around the figures, which were hurrying over. Xiaoyan sighed in relief as old man Shen Nong attacked. This caused the speed of Yao Tian's group to soar once again. Nihility, sir. Stop Xiaoyan. That brat also has a Toshe ancient god jade in his hands. Hun Huzi, who was being entangled with Elder Wanhuo and a few others, hurriedly cried out after seeing Xiaoyan's group charging across the sky and was becoming increasingly closer to that particular space. Humph. Do you think that I can make many copies of myself? The nihility devouring flame snorted coldly after hearing Hun Huzi's cry. His voice appeared to be filled with some displeasure. Hun Huzi was quiet after hearing this. He smiled in embarrassment. The nihility devouring flame might be the most powerful person present, but he not only needed to split his attention to stabilize the spatial seal, but he had also suffered an injury from the soul fragment of Yao Di during the big battle earlier. Additionally, he had currently turned into countless of Tunling. Where would he find the strength to split his focus? Leave it to me. Hun Jing. I'll leave this old ghost Yao Dan to you. Trying to block the both of us with just your strength alone is nothing but fantasy. One of the 4 demon saints of the Han clan from a battlefield in the sky mockingly glanced at Yao Dan, who was in a somewhat crazy state, in front of him. His body flashed and an after-image appeared, after which he escaped from the fight and directly rushed towards the spot where Xiaoyan's group was like an old eagle. Xiaoyan. He, this name is not unfamiliar to me. There has been many rumors about you within the Han clan. If it is not because the clan is preparing our plan, I would have already come out and meet you. You are the only person in many years who had been able to cause my Han clan to suffer losses time and time again. Hun Yan's speed was extremely terrifying. Within a couple of breaths' time, he had appeared in front of Xiaoyan's group and laughed coldly. Xiaoyan's expression sunk as he looked at another tiger appearing to block their path. The strength of this Hun Yan was extremely terrifying. Based on his senses, this fellow had likely reached the advanced 7-star Do Sheng class. He was much stronger than even Yao Dan. Life Spirit Flame. Old man Shen Nong from behind also had a change in expression because of the appearance of Hun Yan. Soon after, he immediately attacked. The large sea of green flame gathered and turned into a huge fire beast with 4 limbs. After which, it charged violently at the latter. Life Spirit Flame. Haha. I am also quite interested in it. After capturing you this time around, this life spirit flame will belong to me." Hun Yan laughed faintly as he faced the sharp attack by that huge beast. His large hand was suddenly clenched. Monstrous Do Chi gathered and directly formed a huge palm, which slammed onto the large beast. A frightening force actually scattered the fire beast with a strike. The force was, the wind did not diminish as it grabbed towards Xiao Yan's group. The combat strength of this life spirit flame is indeed insufficient. Old man Shen Nong involuntarily laughed bitterly after seeing that the attack by the life spirit flame was useless. He looked at the huge palm that fell from the sky and hurriedly increased his speed. Swoosh! The speed of Xiao Yan's group soared as the huge palm grabbed at them. They narrowly dodged it. However, some of those behind them were unlucky. In the face of the huge claw, even the one-star peak Dao Sheng experts present amongst them had collapsed under the palm and explode into a cluster of blood fog. Xiao Yan did not have the time to be bothered about the many miserable cries emitted from behind him. His eyes stared intently at Hun Yan in front of him. The position of this person was coincidentally where the spatial seal had been shattered. In other words, if they wanted to tear open a spatial crack, they must defeat this old fellow. However, trying to defeat a top expert who had reached the advanced 7-star Dosheng class posed quite a difficulty to the current Xiao Yan. Northern King. Xiao Yan's eyes flickered. He threw Yao Tian, whom he had held in his hand, towards Yao Lao. A thought immediately passed through his mind. That statue-like Northern King, who had been following behind him, unhesitatingly turned into a ray of black light that charged forward. A wind containing a frightening strength directly covered Hun Yan. Huh? Is this a puppet? A surprise flashed across Hun Yan's eyes as he faced the unusually sharp attack from the Northern King. Even he had seldom seen such a powerful puppet which did not show any signs of being unfamiliar with combat. Its physical body might be strong, but a puppet is ultimately a puppet. Although Hun Yan was surprised, he did not withdraw even a little. Monstrous Do Chi surged. He waved his hand and the Do Chi changed into 1,000 feet large Do Chi hand, which easily received the Northern King's sharp attack. Occasionally wind churned as he struck his palm forward. The vast and mighty Do Chi forced back the Northern King. Its incomparably hard body revealed some half-inch deep scars. Given the strength of the Northern King, it was a little too difficult for it to fight against an expert at the advanced 7-star Dao Sheng class. "Little Yi," Xiao Yan cried out while the Northern King was stopping Hun Yan with all its strength. Little Yi quickly rose from Xiao Yan's body. Finally, it completely merged with Xiao Yan's soul. Purifying demonic lotus flame came erupted from Xiao Yan's body in all directions following the merger. His body had once again turned crystal clear. Even the bones and internal organs in his body had been covered by a pink crystal layer. Extermination Fire Body. Xiao Yan had unleashed his strongest attack of his the moment he began fighting. He understood that an ordinary attack was completely useless against such an expert. Extermination Fire Lotus. Xiao Yan suddenly clenched his hand after the fire body was formed. 6 different colored heavenly flame formed a spiraling shape in his palm, after which they mixed with each other. Within a short moment, it had formed a fire lotus with 5 different colored. An extermination-like aura spread the moment the fire lotus was formed. Go! Xiao Yan's arm shook the moment the fire lotus was formed. The extermination fire lotus was accompanied by a brilliant fire tail as it shot out with lightning speed. Finally, it exploded a short distance from Hun Yan. Bang! An earth-shaking energy explosion resounded over the place. A firestorm, which was filled with an exterminating force, raged wildly. Any tooling that was within 1,000 feet from the storm would be struck by the waves. Their bodies would immediately turn into black blood, which vaporized under the high temperature. Humph. You do have some ability. However, if this is your trump card, you should just obediently hand over the Tushi ancient god Jade in your hands. I can still allow you to die peacefully. The firestorm swept over the sky. However, that icy cold voice of Hun Yan continued to be slowly emitted from within the storm. Everyone could see a monstrous black vapor surging from the middle of the firestorm. It actually managed to block the raging firestorm. Hun Yan stepped on the empty air at the middle of the black vapor. He took a step forward at a time. His clothes fluttered in the absence of any wind, while he wore a dark and dense expression. Xiao Yan's expression changed slightly after seeing the unhurt Hun Yan. This was the first time that he had used the Extermination Fire Lotus while unleashing the Extermination Fire Body. He did not expect that he was still unable to seriously damage Hun Yan in spite of this. The strength of an advanced 7-star Dao Sheng was indeed extremely terrifying. The aura of that old man is a little unsteady. It looks like that attack of yours from earlier has still managed to hurt him. However, it is still insufficient to seriously injure him. Old man Shen Nong spoke with a grave expression. Xiao Yan, we must escape as soon as possible. Otherwise, if those experts from the Yao clan were to be completely exterminated, we will also have difficulty escaping this place. Yao Lao cried out in a deep voice. Xiao Yan nodded quietly. His eyes looked at Hun Yan, who was wearing a cold smile on his dense face. He suddenly exhaled and spoke in a deep voice. Elder Shen Nong, Yao Tian, lend me the heavenly flames within your body. Old man Shen Nong and Yao Taiyin were startled upon hearing this. However, they did not have time to ask questions at this moment. The former was open-minded. He waved his hand, and the medicinal ingredient walking stick in his hand landed in Xiao Yan's hands. Yao Tian hesitated for a moment before quickly spitting out a cluster of dark brown flame. The flame vaguely agglomerated into a turtle shape. This was naturally the heavenly flame ranked 13th on the heavenly flame ranking. The turtle spiritual earth flame. Xiao Yan held the walking stick with one hand and grabbed the turtle spiritual earth flame with the other. His crystal-clear body vaguely emitted a mysterious luster. Under this condition, both Little Yi and him had been completely merged together. From a certain point of view, he was currently in possession of the constitution of a heavenly flame spirit, as long as their owners do not resist. He would be able to use the heavenly flames that he had never refined before. However, their strength would naturally be a little weaker as compared to those that he had refined. At this moment, however, there was no time for him to think of this. Xiao Yan alone possessed 6 types of heavenly flames. If these 2 types of heavenly flames were to be added, the fire lotus that was formed would be an unprecedented fire lotus formed by 8 types of heavenly flames. Its might would definitely be extremely terrifying. The life spirit flame and the turtle spiritual earth flame were quickly turned into 2 clusters of different colored flames in Xiao Yan's hands. There was a little resistance being vaguely emitted. After all, the 2 types of heavenly flames already had their respective owners, even though their owners did not resist. Their instincts would still pose some resistance. Moreover, this was the case despite Xiao Yan having transformed into possessing a heavenly flame constitution. If an ordinary person was to hold them, it was likely that they would have already exploded instead of acting in such a docile manner. Xiao Yan frowned slightly as he detected the slight resistance being emitted from the 2 clusters of essence flames. He flicked his finger. A wisp of pink flame was extended from his finger, after which it wrapped the 2 clusters of essence heavenly flames. Immediately, the fire glow around the 2 clusters of heavenly flames showed a slight sign of stiffening. Even though these 2 heavenly flames did not possess any intelligence, they were still being frightened to the point of not daring to move in the face of the frightening, purifying demonic lotus flames' purifying strength. Xiao Yan sighed in relief within his heart after seeing the 2 clusters of essence heavenly flames becoming quiet. He curled his hand and 6 flames were once again formed. Xiao Yan flicked his finger while these 6 flames were slowly merging. The life spirit flame and turtle spiritual earth flame were shot into them. Bang, bang! The flame, which was quietly being gathered, emitted a low and deep sound following the entry of these 2 heavenly flames. Waves after waves of frightening energy wildly whistled from within. It actually showed a vague sign of being about to explode. Xiao Yan's expression became a little grave as he sensed the change within the flame. Even though he currently possessed the heavenly flame spirit constitution of Little Yi, he was indeed a little too unfamiliar with these 2 heavenly flames. There was naturally some difficulty in merging them. However, this did not cause Xiao Yan to panic. His perfect heavenly state spiritual strength poured into the flame like floodwater. Immediately, the wild and violent nature within became like a large tank of cold water being added to boiling water. It immediately became quiet, immediately. The wild violence scattered. The fire once again agglomerated under Xiao Yan's control. At the same time, the Dao Qi within Xiao Yan's body continuously surged into the flame like floodwater. The addition of 2 types of heavenly flames had increased Xiao Yan's Dao Qi exhaustion many times over. An exhaustion of that extent was something that even the current Xiao Yan had difficulty supporting. with an increasing amount of Do-Chi being poured into the flame. Layers after layers of seemingly real ripples began to be formed within it. A partial lotus shape had vaguely appeared with the flame. A kind of fluctuation that frightened even Xiaoyan quietly spread from it. The might of an angry Buddha lotus flame being formed from 8 types of heavenly flames could really be described as having the ability to destroy the world. Hun Yan, who had been held back by the fearless Northern King, had also detected the frightening fluctuation as it spread. His expression finally experienced a change as he looked at Xiaoyan in a grave manner. Those eyes of his were focused on the 8-colored flame on Xiaoyan's hands. His eyes involuntarily twitched. Even he could sense a danger from that force. This brat is indeed extremely strange. He is merely a 5-star Do Sheng. Yet he is able to unleash such a frightening attack. A cold glint flashed within Hun Yan's eyes. He suddenly slammed his palm onto the body of the Northern King. The sudden increase in his strength directly caused the chest of the Northern King to sink a little. If it was not because it was a puppet, this palm would have already taken his life. Even though this was the case, that ferocious palm wind still caused the Northern King to fly back by 1,000 feet, after which Hun Yan's body moved and directly pounced onto Xiao Yan. "Stop him!" Yao Lao's expression changed upon seeing this. He let out a cold cry and a Do-Chi pillar shot out. However, such an attack was completely ignored by Hun Yan. It was scattered with the wave of his sleeve. Red poison palm. Old man Shen Nong had a grave expression after seeing that the obstruction was futile. His body rushed forward and his hand swiftly swelled. It also turned bright red in color. An unusual phenomenon was vaguely emitted from it as it smashed towards Hun Yan. Faced with old man Shen Nong, Hun Yan could only let out a cold snort. He flipped and lifted his hand. Those 5 fingers became charred black. He randomly slammed his hand forward and collided with the bright red palm wind of old man Shen Nong. Grug. The collision between the two emitted an unusual fragrance. Immediately, old man Shen Nong's expression paled. A mouthful of fresh blood was spat out. His body also miserably fly backwards. Clearly, he had suffered a big loss upon contact. A group of little shrimps actually dares to try and escape from the hands of my Hun clan in your dreams. Hun Yan laughed coldly after he defeated old man Shen Nong with a strike from his palm. His body flashed and he appeared in front of Xiao Yan. His black fingers were just like the fingers of a death god as they grabbed towards Xiao Yan with lightning-like speed. Xiao Yan's eyes stared intently at Hun Yan's claw wind. The latter would land on his body in an instant. The sharp wind easily tore through the Do-Chi defense on Xiao Yan's body, after which it heavily landed on his body. Thud, thud. The black fingers cut across, bringing with it some blood and sparks. The clothes in front of Xiao Yan's chest had directly turned into dust. A layer of tough dragon scale covered his body. However, 5 deep wounds had already appeared on the dragon scale at this moment. Fresh blood continued to flow out from his wound. If it was not because of the protection from the Dragon Phoenix ancient armor, it was likely that Xiao Yan's stomach would have been torn apart by this strike. Xiao Yan's face turned pale after suffering this heavy blow. Hun Yan's claw wind had directly sent him flying backwards. However, an icy cold smile flashed across Xiao Yan's eyes as he flew backwards. His mouth widened slightly. "Explode!" Hun Yan's eyes suddenly shrunk after the soft voice was emitted. His sight stilled at the spot a couple of centimeters from him. There was a palm-sized fire lotus slowly rotating there. A brilliant 8-colored fire lotus was rotating at that spot. It appeared incomparably beautiful. Hun Yan's expression changed drastically as he looked at the fire lotus, which was in close proximity. Before he could react, however, a bright luster had erupted from within the fire lotus. Countless of light pillar containing an extermination force erupted. They shot out from the fire lotus in a densely packed manner. Any person struck by the fire lotus would be turned into ashes almost immediately. From the looks of it, it was fortunate that Xiao Yan had borrowed Hun Yan's strength and flew backwards. Otherwise, it was likely that he would be shot by these extermination light pillars. Hun Yan was the first to be struck. His body was penetrated by many light pillars. However, it did not turn into dust at this moment. Monstrous Do-Chi continued to surge from within his body as it tried its best to block the erosion of the extermination force. However, the fire lotus, which had been merged from 8 types of heavenly flames, was not simple. An extermination-like fire lotus was emitted from within the fire lotus after the light pillar shot out. The bright light in the sky appeared just like a bright sun. Intense piercing light had basically covered the entire Yao realm. Bang! An indescribable extermination-like force swept in all directions across the sky. The mountain range below, which was already full of holes, had turned into a red ground. The terrifyingly high temperature had melted the entire mountain range. Xiaoyan grabbed Yao Lao and the others. Their bodies flew backwards as the purifying demonic lotus flame formed a huge fire barrier in front of them. Only then did the group avoid getting implicated by the attack. The extermination force lasted for quite a long time before it gradually faded. A black smoke fell from the middle. Finally, it violently landed below, smashing the ground and forming a 10,000 feet large pit. Xiaoyan's eyes looked into the distance. He could vaguely see Hun Yan within it. The latter was wrapped in a black vapor. However, his aura had become a lot weaker than before. Clearly, he had at the very least been seriously injured. Old man Shen Nong by the side inhaled a breath of cold air. His eyes were filled with shock as he watched this scene. It was difficult for him to imagine that Xiaoyan was actually able to force an advance 7-star Dao Sheng until such an extent. Hurry and leave. The space at that spot had already been torn apart by the remnant force. Xiaoyan's face was pale. The piercing pain transmitted from his chest caused his body to tremble. He swung his hand and tossed the life spirit flame and turtle spiritual earth flame towards old man Shen Nong and Yao Tian as he cried out in an anxious voice. His current condition was also extremely terrible. An 8-colored fire lotus's exhaustion was far more terrifying as compared to what he had imagined. Even his current self could only use it once. However, he would end up being unusually weak. A weakened person had almost no chance of surviving in this situation, with danger lurking all around. Only after hearing Xiaoyan's words did everyone realize that the middle ripples from the extermination force had actually been torn apart, forming a spatial crack line that was a couple of dozen feet in size. They immediately braced their attention. Quick, Xiaoyan took out a jade bottle from his storage ring. He randomly poured the medicinal liquid inside onto the injuries on his chest, and once again urged. Taking the lead, he extended the bone wings on his back and rushed into the spatial crack with lightning-like speed. Now was the best opportunity to escape. Stop them! Hun Yan's body swayed as he rose from the ground. His expression was ferocious as he roared. It was unexpected that even with his strength, he had actually been forced into such a miserable state by Xiaoyan. Bang bang! All the remaining experts from the Yao clan actually began to crazily self-destruct after seemingly having sensed that there was hope for Xiaoyan's group to escape. The waves from the explosions completely blocked those experts from the Hun clan who wanted to free themselves to stop Xiaoyan's group. Hun Jing, who was exchanging blows with Yao Dan, had a gloomy face upon seeing this scene. Unexpectedly, that brat was even able to force back Hun Yan. However, Yao Dan appeared to be aware of his intentions just as he was planning to free himself to block the group. A crazy and ferocious smile surfaced on Yao Dan's face, after which the Du Qi within his body suddenly became wild and violent. Xiaoyan. Thank you very much. Yao Dan turned his head as the Du Qi within his body reached the limit of its untamed violence. He looked at Xiaoyan, who had grabbed Yao Tian, Yao Ling and the rest as he entered the spatial crack. Those crazy scarlet eyes of Yao Dan revealed a smile that seemed to have been relieved of a great burden. After which, an extermination explosion that was not weaker than the 8-colored fire lotus explosion from earlier once again resounded within this blood-covered realm. The frightening extermination storm swept apart within the Yao realm. Other than a small number of extremely powerful individuals, most of those who were struck by it were turned into ashes in an instant. The might from the self-destruction of a 7-star Dosheng could really annihilate the world. This old lunatic, faced with this extermination storm that spread across the place. Those experts from the Hall of Soul, who were originally planning on stopping Xiaoyan's group, had no choice but to quickly withdraw. Even someone as strong as Hun Jing and Hun Yan could only step back and stay low at this moment. The storm continued for a couple of minutes before it gradually weakened. After the extermination ripples disappeared, 100,000 feet large hole appeared on the ground below. The bottom of the hole was completely black. It was as though one could not see the bottom. Such a frightening, destructive force caused the eyes of Hun Yan and the others to shrink slightly. Hun Jing's and Hun Yan's eyes immediately turned towards the direction which Xiao Yan's group had fled towards as the storm scattered. However, they merely saw a spatial crack that was slowly being repaired. Xiao Yan and the others had already vanished. Clearly, they had fled from the spatial crack. Damn it! Hun Jing's expression was gloomy upon seeing this scene. He let out a soft curse and suddenly grabbed towards the spot where Yao Dan had self-destructed. Immediately, a glow flew over, finally. It turned into an ancient jade that appeared in his palm. From its appearance, it was something similar to that Tushen ancient god jade in Xiao Yan's hand. It seemed that this was the ancient jade that belonged to the Yao clan. Why have you let that brat flee? Hun Huzi's figure also appeared beside Hun Jing as he spoke with a sunken expression. Elder Wan Huo and the rest had already been completely killed at this moment. The former did not have much ability to resist in front of a 7-star Do Sheng. Hun Jing held the ancient jade. He lifted his eyelid and looked at the extremely miserable Hun Yan, who had headed over. At this moment, green and white intertwined on his face. He did not expect that he had actually been turned into such a miserable state by Xiao Yan, even after attacking personally. This brat does indeed have some ability. No wonder he is able to cause our Hun clan to suffer losses time and time again. Hun Yan's eyes were gloomy. However, he did not shrink from his responsibility. The destructive force that Xiao Yan had unleashed earlier was something that even an ordinary 7-star Do Sheng would not be able to produce. Moreover, from the information that they had obtained, Xiao Yan did not possess such a fighting ability. There was nothing to laugh about him suffering such a loss. We must not allow them to flee successfully. Although we are now no longer afraid of the Gu clan learning of this news, that brat does possess a Toshi ancient god jade in his hand. We will be able to save a lot of trouble in the future if we obtain it. Hun Huzi said he had been played by Xiao Yan while he was refining pill earlier. Now, it was only natural that he did not wish to see the latter escape. We should resolve the matter of the Yao clan first. Our mission is to collect the bloodline strength of the Yao clan. As for Xiao Yan's group, how can it be so easy for them to escape? There are still Hun Sha and Hun Tu outside of the Yao clan's realm. Send the news to them. Ask them to dispatch one of them to kill Xiao Yan. Hun Yan spoke coldly. If it is not because the both of them needs to help Nihility Sir to stabilize the spatial seal, it would be impossible for that brat to tear open a spatial crack and flee. Aye. Hun Jing also nodded. He glanced at this realm, which was filled with a bloody stench. A cruel smile involuntarily flashed across his eyes as he spoke in a dense voice. With this bloodline strength from the Yao clan, it will be able to extend our Hun clan for another 1,000 years. At that time, once our plan succeeds, the clan head will become the first person in thousands of years to step into the Dudi class. At that time, the entire Du Qi continent would be under the rule of our Hun clan. Even the Gu clan can only grovel at our feet. Originally, this day would have come much earlier. In the end, it was hindered by the Xiao clan. Back then, our attack on the Xiao clan had caused our clan to suffer quite a serious loss. We have only recovered until our peak after recuperating for so many years. Otherwise, we would not need to be overly afraid of the Gu clan. Hun Huzi's tone was ferocious as he said, "Everything is worth it to eliminate the Xiao clan. That clan is far too difficult to deal with. If they were to join hands with the Gu clan in the future, it might really be possible for them to threaten our Hun clan. We must eliminate them. Moreover, that Xiao Xuan, even our clan head at his peak, is afraid of him. We must not allow such an enemy to remain." Hun Jing spoke in a deep voice. A frightened expression flashed across his eyes when he mentioned that name. It was as though he had recalled the earth-shaking miserable battle back then. Hun Yan took out a medicinal pill and swallowed it. His eyes were dark and cold as he looked at the lingering battles still present below. He involuntarily let out a dark and cold smile. Start collecting the bloodline strength. With these bloodline, the clan head might be able to advance another level. At that time, our Hun clan will launch an all-out attack. The space hundreds of kilometers away from the Shenong mountain range suddenly became distorted. A spatial crack line appeared. Immediately, many miserable-looking figures continued to rush out from it. Everyone only heaved a sigh of relief after landing on the mountain. They had finally escaped from the prison where they would have to die. "Are you all right?" Yao Lao wiped off his cold sweat. Being able to escape from the realm sealed by the Hun clan was considered a miracle. However, he quickly turned his eyes towards Xiaoyan. His expression changed slightly after seeing the injury on the latter's chest. "I'm all right." Xiaoyan clenched his teeth, his hand rubbed over his wound. Wisps of pink flame entered his injuries immediately. White smoke was emitted, traces of black vapor was being forced out from the wound by the purifying demonic Lotus flame. Xiaoyan finally sighed in relief after resolving the eroding qi present within his injury. He stuffed a medicinal pill into his mouth and recuperated for a moment. Only then did he turn his head and looked at the unusually quiet mountain range behind him. No one could have imagined that the realm within this mountain range had already turned into a complete bloodbath with corpses lying all over it. Besides Xiaoyan, those dozen over younger generation of the Yao clan, whom Xiaoyan had rescued from the Yao realm, were kneeling towards the mountain range with expressions that were full of grief. A couple of ladies amongst them had involuntarily cried, having been constantly living under the protection of the Yao clan all their lives. They had never felt so helpless and hopeless before, compared to the others. Yao Tian and Yao Ling were a little calmer, although there was still an endless despair within their eyes. They did not display it on their face. The both of them had matured greatly after experiencing this great change. "Mr. Xiaoyan, there is nothing that we can do to repay this great favor of yours. If there is a change in the future, the Yao clan will definitely repay you with our lives." Yao Tian turned around, cupped his hands tightly towards Xiaoyan, and spoke in a deep voice. Beside him, Yao Ling had also gathered her pretty eyes onto Xiaoyan and bowed slightly. "All of you should continue living. There is no need to repay anything. If it is not because those elders from the Yao clan had sacrificed their lives to fight, no one would be able to escape." Xiaoyan waved his hand. His heart also felt some pity towards the misfortune that had befell Yao Tian's group. From today onwards, Yao Tian was no longer the brightest star of the Yao clan. The latter would be just like him and needed to rely on his own strength. Whether Yao Tian could revive the clan would determine on his own ability. "What should we do next?" Yao Lao sighed and asked. "The Hun clan is far too brutal. There are many chiefs and elders from the various sects on the Central Plains who had been killed by them this time around. If news of this spread, the Hun clan will definitely become the common enemy of everyone. However, these factions are just like ants from the perspective of the Hun clan, and they will have difficulty catching its attention." Xiaoyan revealed an expression of deep thought. A moment later, he said, "We must head to the Gu clan. Currently, the only one able to fight with the Hun clan is the Gu clan. They will definitely not stand idly and watch after such a thing had happened. At that time, only by combining with the Yan and Lei clan will it be possible to restrain the Hun clan. Otherwise, the other ancient clans will also have difficulty escaping this great calamity. From the way the Hun clan was able to easily eliminate the Yao clan, even the Yan and Lei clan would likely end up with the same fate. Of course, the Sky Mansion Alliance would likely end up with an even more miserable fate. In terms of foundation, the alliance still had some gap when compared with these ancient clans. Xiaoyan had never believed that the Hun clan would let the Sky Mansion Alliance off. Hence, he must think of a solution as soon as possible. Otherwise, when the Hun clan attacks the alliance, the result would not be any better than the scene today. "Teacher, you should first return to the alliance and make arrangement. Raise the defense level to its highest. Those that need to be shifted should proceed secretly. Tell everyone to be cautious." Yao Lao hesitated upon hearing this. Finally, he nodded. Given his strength, he would not be able to provide Xiaoyan with much of a help by following the latter. Instead, he would only be a burden. "The Shenong mountain range is not longer safe. I shall accompany you to the Sky Mansion Alliance. I heard that that old demon from the Pill Tower is also there. It has been many years since I have seen him. I really wish to meet him." Old man Shen Nong hesitated for a moment before speaking. The Hun clan was also targeting him. If he continued to remain alone, he would really be unlucky if the Hun clan was to discover his trail. Xiaoyan was also startled upon hearing these words. He immediately rejoiced. This old man Shen Nong was not only a 6-star Do Sheng, but his alchemist skills was something that few could match. If he could stay at the alliance, the strength of the alliance would soar greatly. Xiaoyan was naturally happy to see such a situation. "Yao Tian, both you and your sister should head with me to the Gu clan. The both of you will need to explain the matter of the Yao clan In order for those elders from the Gu clan to believe, the remaining people should head to the Sky Mansion Alliance first. What do you say? Xiaoyan looked towards Yao Tian and Yao Ling and asked, "We will listen to Mr. Xiaoyan's orders." Yao Tian and Yao Ling exchanged glances before nodding their heads. Although Xiaoyan was not very old, they clearly understood in their hearts that there was indeed an extremely great gap between them and Xiaoyan. In that case, let's get going. Xiaoyan sighed softly. His internal injuries had been significantly recovered during this short period of time. His voice had just sounded when his expression suddenly changed. He turned his head abruptly and looked at a mountain a short distance away. There was a figure carrying a huge dark red ghost blade on his shoulder, leaning on a huge tree. Those savage red eyes appeared just like a bloody sea. Ugh, have I been discovered? A ferocious smile rose on that figure's face after he detected Xiaoyan's gaze. An evil aura suddenly soared. Someone from the Hun clan. Xiaoyan's eyes were focused on the human figure on the distant mountain. Yao Lao and the other looked over. Their expressions immediately changed drastically. It was unexpected that there were actually experts from the Hun clan present on this Shenong mountain range. It's Hun Sha, one of the 4 demon saint. His strength is comparable to Hun Jing and Hun Yan. Old man Shenong was quite familiar with these people from the Hun clan. Hence, his expression changed slightly after seeing the monstrous evil aura. He sighed softly. This Hun clan has really dispatched all of its experts to destroy the Yao clan. Unexpectedly, there is really someone who can tear open the spatial seal placed by Nihility, sir. The figure in the distance stepped on the empty air. In a flash, he appeared in the sky above them. He looked down at Xiaoyan's group and focused his eyes onto Xiaoyan. His mouth was involuntarily parted into a smile. Those dense white teeth contained a stern, evil aura, giving them the appearance of belonging to a savage beast. "You are Xiaoyan, right? I have heard that the old man Hun Yan has suffered a loss in your hands. The members of the Xiao clan are indeed extraordinary. Fortunately, my Hun clan had decisively killed the Xiao clan. Otherwise, this world would currently be faced with a completely different situation." Xiaoyan's eyes stared intently at this black-clothed human figure. Although the latter had a dense smile on his face, his pair of eyes were filled with an indifferent evil aura. Clearly, this person was not some soft-hearted person. "What should we do?" Yao Lao asked in a soft voice. It is unexpected that they had encountered a wolf after escaping from a tiger's den. This fellow was obviously not an ordinary person. No one present was a match for this person if they fought. Xiaoyan's 8-colored fire lotus might be terrifying, but it could not be used continuously. Moreover, from the situation when he had used it earlier, even an 8-colored fire lotus would have difficulty kill an expert of this level. Should he manage to escape, their group would really have a difficulty fighting him. "Teacher, you should leave first. I will block him for a while." Xiaoyan exhaled slowly and said, "What?" Yao Lao's expression changed immediately. How could Xiaoyan alone be a match for this person? "Relax, I have my own plans. All of you should hurry up and leave. After that, hide your auras. I will hurry to the Gu clan after holding him back for a while," Xiaoyan softly said. He immediately clenched his hand. A jade bottle appeared in it. There was a dragon eye-sized medicinal pill floating within it. A shocking energy gathered like a crystal within the bottle, while an unusual fragrance spread. Tier 9, mysterious pill. Yao Lao only sighed in relief after seeing that medicinal pill. However, his eyes still contained some worry. The energy of a Tier 9 mysterious pill was extremely terrifying. It would require many aiding medicinal pills to help in the refinement after one consumed it. Hence, even with Xiaoyan's strength, he did not dare to easily swallow it. Moreover, he would definitely have to fight with Hun Sha after swallowing the pill. This would mean he would not have the attention to refine the medicinal strength. In that case, it might cause his body to suffer a relatively severe damage, although he was worried in his heart. Yao Lao also understood the present situation. They would still have a chance to survive if they escaped. If they remained behind, however, it would not only end up distracting Xiaoyan, but they might really be eliminated by this fellow. "You should be careful. Shatter this jade if you manage to escape. I will be able to feel it." Yao Lao finally stiffed a jade piece into Xiaoyan's heart while his heart struggled for a moment, after which he let out a low cry and took the lead to rush forward. Old man Shen Nong behind hesitated for a moment before grabbing the youths from the Yao clan and quickly followed. "Where do you think you are going?" Hun Sha frowned after seeing that Yao Lao and the others were actually fleeing. The ghost blade formed by blood in his hand was swung downwards. A 10,000 feet large blood blade glow shot through the sky and sharply hacked towards Yao Lao's group. Clang! The blade glow flew past with lightning-like speed. However, a black figure appeared in front of it while it was still 1,000 feet from Yao Lao's group. Both arms of the figure were crossed, and it forcefully received that sharp blade glow. Bang! Although they had received the blade glow, that frightening force had directly pushed that figure into the mountain range below. An entire mountain shook and collapsed, huge rocks rolled, and a loud rumbling sound appeared. The speed of Yao Lao's group once again soared after Hun Sha's attack was blocked. Within a couple of flashes, they had rushed out of the mountain range and swiftly disappeared into the horizon. Useless people. It is fine that they have escaped. Just capturing you will do. Hun Sha's brow was lifted after he saw Yao Lao's group successfully fleeing. However, he could not be bothered to give chase. He turned his head, and his eyes suddenly paused on the Tier 9 mysterious pill in Xiaoyan's hand. A greedy flashed within those eyes. "Xiaoyan, hand over that medicinal pill, and I will give you an easy death. What do you say? Otherwise, I will extract your soul and burn it for hundreds of years. I don't think you wish to suffer a fate worse than death." Xiaoyan merely smiled coldly in the face of Hun Sha's words. He squeezed his hand, and the jade bottle burst apart. The medicinal pill within it immediately turned into a ray of light. Before it could flee, however, Xiaoyan caught it with great reflex and directly stuffed it into his mouth. Bang! After the medicinal pill entered his body, the clothes over Xiaoyan's body had directly been turned into ashes. Densely packed dragon scales appeared over his skin. Waves after waves of indescribable energy continuously surged out from within his body like floodwater. At the end, the energy had actually agglomerated into an armor over Xiaoyan's body. What a powerful energy! Under the vast and mighty energy, Xiaoyan's body began to tremble continuously. The inside of his body felt as though he had just swallowed many huge dragons. It was a complete mess. Wild erosion spread over every part of his body. Under the uncontrolled violence of this energy, even Xiaoyan's perfect heavenly state soul had been humbled. Roar! An endless energy galloped through the interior of Xiaoyan's body. Finally, it turned into an earth-shaking roar that resounded over the entire area. The surrounding mountains had once again collapsed in the face of the furious roar. Yao Tian and Yao Ling also hurriedly stepped back. Interesting. Swallowing a Tier 9. Mysterious pill requires many other things to aid in its refinement. This action of yours is no different from committing suicide. Hun Sha lifted his brow after detecting the energy erupted from within Xiaoyan's body. He immediately shook his head and laughed coldly. "I have given you a path to take, but you refuse to. Do not blame me for being ruthless." Hun Sha suddenly stepped forward as his word sounded. His body appeared in front of Xiaoyan almost immediately. The blood-colored large blade in his hand emitted a swoosh sound as it tore through the air and slashed onto Xiaoyan's neck was an extremely shocking speed. The bloodlight was rapidly magnified in Xiaoyan's eyes. He clenched his hand, and a mighty energy agglomerated into a huge, heavy ruler. Since he was unable to dodge, he would directly clash head-on with Hun Sha. Clang! An unusually sharp wind spread as the blade and ruler collided. The mountain where the two of them stood on had been split into two. It collapsed with a bang while the entire mountain range trembled. Xiaoyan's figure was directly forced back by thousands of feet. A sweetness rose on his throat. However, both of his eyes were unusually excited. The earlier clash had exhausted quite a lot of energy, greatly relieving him of the feeling of being about to explode within his body. Again, Xiaoyan did not fear Hun Sha as the medicinal strength continued to surge out from within his body. He moved and took the lead to appear in front of Hun Sha. The heavy ruler in his hand did not contain any skill. It directly used the most brutal method to hack downwards violently, time and time again. The vast and mighty energy had basically agglomerated into a 10,000 feet large ruler glow. The mountains were split wherever it passed. Clang, clang, clang. Hun Sha's expression was a little ugly as he faced Xiaoyan, whose Du Qi had erupted violently after swallowing the Tier 9 mysterious pill. The blood blade in his hands danced, forming many after-images and receiving those heavy mountain-like ruler strikes. However, his body would descend by thousands of feet each time the heavy ruler fell. This caused his eyes to become a little gloomy. It was unexpected that Xiao Yan was actually so lively, even after experiencing the big battle within the Yao realm. I will just watch how long you can be arrogant for. A Tier 9 mysterious pill might be powerful, but you do not have the time to refine it. The energy will completely damage your body. At that time, I will see how you will continue fighting. Although Hunsha had been pressed into a disadvantage by Xiao Yan's seemingly mad attacks, Hunsha was unusually calm. He let out a cold laughter while putting up a defense. Xiao Yan completely ignored his cold laughter. The excitement in his eyes grew increasingly intense as the heavy ruler in his hand fell in a crazy fashion. His strikes became increasingly heavy. The entire Shenong mountain range had been destroyed into a complete mess at this moment. Clang! Another mountain-like powerful strike fell, and Hunsha's arm had become a little numb. His body fell backwards by 10,000 feet. Many mountains were shattered to dust along the way. His expression also became wigglier. Haha, how enjoyable. Let's fight again another day. The math excitement in Xiao Yan's eyes suddenly vanished as he sent Hunsha flying with a ruler strike. He laughed towards the sky. The pair of bone wings on his back was flapped as he immediately turned around and flew towards another direction. At that direction, Black Figure had grabbed Yao Tian and Yao Ling as it flew to the horizon. It was the Northern King, which Xiao Yan had ordered to secretly take the duo away while Xiao Yan was holding Hunsha back. Bang! Hunsha stomped his foot onto a mountain. Immediately, it was covered in cracks. Finally, the mountain was blasted apart and his body was stabilized. His face was dark and cold as he watched Xiao Yan flee into the distance. A low roar erupted. Xiao Yan, regardless of where you flee to, I will capture you, cut off your flesh, and extract your soul. Hunsha moved as those vicious words sounded. He turned into a bloody light as he rushed forward with great speed. From the looks of it, he was clearly not intending to allow Xiao Yan to escape. A deep thunder-like sound suddenly appeared in the vast sky. Immediately, a bright light that caused one to be stunned flashed across the sky. In a flash, it appeared in the horizon. The rumbling explosion caused many experts along the way to raise their heads in shock. Soon after the bright light flashed across the sky, a monstrous evil aura suddenly spread across the sky from behind. A black light flew past. The monstrous evil aura caused many experts to be frightened. Even some of the sects did not dare to pay attention to it. Just a random wave of a hand by that kind of expert would likely eliminate the entire faction. The chasing conducted by such an expert was not something that they could observe. This fellow really doesn't give up. The bright light flashed through the sky. The figure inside paused momentarily and frowned upon sensing the murderous aura from behind. That figure was naturally Xiao Yan, who had fled after exchanging blows with Hunsha. However, he did not expect that the latter would actually continue to follow him. From the looks of it, the latter did not show any signs of giving up. Mr. Xiao Yan, there is still half a day's journey from this place to the Gu realm. That fellow is catching up. Edo Tian, who was in Xiao Yan's hand, did his best to block the wind pressure from their great speed and cried out loud. Xiao Yan nodded slightly and frowned. The energy of the Tier 9 mysterious pill could only be described as terrifying. Currently, the interior of his body had already been damaged by the wild and violent energy until it was extremely miserable, even though Little Yi had already done its best to refine the energy. It was still a little insignificant. If it was not because of his strong body, his body might have already exploded from the energy. Despite this, it was clearly not a long-term solution. How would he escape from Hunsha if the energy from the Tier 9 mysterious pill was to injure his body? The both of you should prepare to leave first. The condition inside my body is quite bad. I'm afraid the Hunsha will catch up soon if I bring the two of you along with me. One of you should be able to keep your life if you leave now. That fellow's target is me. It is likely that he won't chase you. Xiao Yan mused for a moment and spoke in a deep voice. Even with the support of the energy from the Tier 9 mysterious pill, his speed would be slower than Hunsha if he brought two people with him. I'll follow you. Yao Tian and Yao Ling spoke almost at the same time after Xiao Yan's words sounded. They were aware that it was most dangerous to follow beside Xiao Yan. However, they wished to leave the safest position to the other party. What a touching scene. However, there is no time for argument now. Xiao Yan frowned and said. Yao Tian and Yao Ling were stunned as he heard this. The latter immediately threw a palm onto Yao Tian's chest. A gentle force pushed the latter away from Xiao Yan. However, Xiao Yan did not stop her. With a wave of his sleeve, he sent Yao Tian flying through the sky. A voice was transmitted into the latter's ears. Hurry up and leave. Yao Tian steadied his body in a miserable manner. His eyes were completely red as he looked at Xiao Yan duo flying into the distance. Without uttering any unnecessary words, he turned around and hurried in another direction. You are really decisive. Xiao Yan hugged Iso Ling's delicate waist. Pink flame wrapped around the both of them. Their speed suddenly soared. Yao Ling's face was a little flushed as her delicate waist was being tightly hugged by Xiao Yan. That cold frost on her face had also diminished slightly. She turned her head and looked at the face beside her. This was a face that was far from the handsome look of her brother Iso Tian. However, it caused her eyes to flicker. Given her cold and haughty nature, she had seldom felt any admiration for a person of the opposite gender during these years. This person was the only exception. The time which both parties had been in contact was quite short. Xiao Yan was serious and casual while he was. A beauty loves a hero. Regardless of how cold the beauty was, it was impossible for her to be an exception to this rule. Xiao Yan did not have the time to be bothered with the thoughts of the beauty in his embrace. At this moment, most of his thoughts were focused on suppressing and refining the out-of-controlled vast and mighty energy in his body. At the same time, he must maintain his speed. These various matters was quite a big test to him. Separate, huh? From far behind Xiao Yan, Hun Sha, who had a gloomy expression, quickly swept his eyes over Xiao Yan's and Yao Tian's back. Finally, he let out a cold snort and continued chasing after Xiao Yan. These members of the Yao clan who had escaped were completely useless to them. However, it was different when it came to Xiao Yan. The latter had the Tu-Shi ancient god Jade in his hand. This was something the Hun clan must obtain. I wish to see just how long you can last for. One party fled, while the other chased in the sky. This continued for a couple of hours. During this period of time, the two parties had basically crossed half of the Central Plains. Although they had caught the attention of many experts along the way, no one dared to intervene in the face of Hun Sha's shocking aura. All they did was simply watch the both parties flying through the sky. Following the flow of time, Xiao Yan's condition had clearly become increasingly worse. The crystal-like seemingly endless energy gathered within the meridians of his body. It firmly sealed off the many meridians. Even though little Yi was doing its best to refine the energy, there would be an endless amount of energy crystals continuously appearing. The energy crystals slowly swelled, and a vague pain was felt in Xiao Yan's unusually tough meridians. The energy of a Tier 9 mysterious pill was actually this frightening. Mr. Xiao Yan. Yao Ling looked at Xiao Yan's miserable expression. Although the strength of her Du Qi was not very strong, her spiritual strength was quite powerful. Hence, she had also sensed that Xiao Yan's spiritual strength had become exhausted as it continued to weaken. If something becomes amiss later on, I will send you away. Xiao Yan forcefully braced his attention. Currently, his body was not only filled with external injuries, but the inside of his body was also a complete mess. It was already quite difficult for him to last until now. Yao Ling gently bit her lips. She suddenly extended her snow-white wrist and handed it to Xiao Yan. She softly said, "My constitution is a little unique. Hence, my blood possessed the effect of nourishing spiritual strength. Mr. Xiao Yan." Xiao Yan was immediately startled upon hearing this. His eyes glanced at the exquisite and attractive face of Yao Ling. The latter looked at him seriously. That appearance did not seem like she was lying. There is actually such a strange constitution. No wonder it is said that this lady might have a chance to step into the D-state spiritual strength. It is likely because of this constitution. A thought passed through Xiao Yan's mind. He did not utter anything unnecessary as he bit on Yao Ling's wrist. His teeth pierced into the blood vessel. A great amount of bright red blood was sucked into Xiao Yan's mouth. Xiao Yan violently shuddered after the blood, which contained a little unusual sweetness, entered his mouth. The blood had turned into a mysterious energy immediately upon entering his mouth. It spread swiftly and surged towards the center of his brow. His originally exhausted spiritual strength was actually being wrapped by a faint bloodlight. A feeling that was fuller than when he was at his peak suddenly appeared. What mysterious blood! A sleek redness swiftly rose onto Xiaoyan's face. Both of his eyes brightened. He could clearly sense that his soul was greedily devouring the blood. This was the first time he had ever felt such a sensation. My spiritual strength might advance further if I sucked her blood dry. A thought from an unknown source flashed across Xiaoyan's heart. It was quickly eliminated by Xiaoyan in the next instant. He looked at Yao Ling, who was gently biting her red lips while wearing a pale expression, and involuntarily slapped himself violently within his heart for the beast-like thought. He slowly relaxed his mouth and wiped off the blood from the corner of his mouth, after which he muttered in an apologetic manner, "Thank you very much." Yao Ling shook her head slightly. Her pretty eyes looked behind her as she pressed her eyebrows together and said, "That fellow has become faster." Xiaoyan's expression changed slightly upon hearing this. He discovered that the sound of rushing wind far behind had become increasingly deep. Clearly, Hunsha had begun to feel impatient and had used some unknown method to increase his speed. "Hold tight. This place is already quite close to the Gu clan. We will be safe once we arrive." Xiaoyan inhaled a deep breath of air. His eyes had become stern. The green-red wings on his back were flapped, and his body turned into a lightning that swiftly hurried into the horizon. "Brat, I will not give you the opportunity to seek refuge in the Gu clan." Hunsha's face appeared extremely gloomy as he gave chase from behind. He did not expect Xiaoyan's speed to suddenly increase after having slowed for a moment. Immediately, the seal formed by his hands changed. Black dough chi erupted in a monstrous fashion and turned into a black bat that was thousands of feet in size. A mouthful of essence blood was spat out. It adhered onto the bat. The bat flapped its wings. One could hear a swoosh sound as it completely vanished. "This is bad." Xiaoyan's expression changed drastically the moment Hunsha's figure disappeared. He grabbed Yao Ling in his embrace and suddenly lowered his body. "Qi!" Xiaoyan's body had just descended when a blood glow rushed out from the space above his head. It brushed past his head as it flew past. "Xiaoyan, where will you flee to?" The space fluctuated, and a dense-looking Hunsha broke out from it. His eyes were ferocious as he stared at Xiaoyan. The blood blade in his hand was swung, and a huge blood glow, which was tens of thousands of feet in size, cut through the air. It had the might of shattering the land as it slashed onto Xiaoyan duo. The blood glow was rapidly magnified in Xiaoyan's eyes. His face was extremely gloomy. His shoulder shook, and Little Yi appeared in a flash. A golden lightning dragon was quickly wiggling on Little Yi's arm. However, Xiaoyan was just about to use the strength of the 9 mysterious golden lightning as a final retaliation when an elderly figure suddenly appeared in the space in front of him. A cry resounded from that figure, "Trying to murder in the territory of my Gu clan? Hunsha, you are really a little too arrogant." The figure which appeared in front of Xiaoyan was wearing green long robes. His hair was completely white. A smile hung on his fair-looking face, giving him a somewhat immortal-like feeling. "Hunsha, you should restrain yourself now that you have reached the territory of the Gu clan after such a long chase." The green-robed old man smilingly looked at Hunsha, whose murderous aura filled the air, and laughed. From the way he spoke, it seemed that he had already sensed Xiaoyan being chased by Hunsha since a long time ago. "Gu Dao, the 3 immortals of the Gu clan." Hunsha's expression was gloomy as he looked at the green-robed old man. A solemn expression surged onto his face. It was unexpected that he had ended up meeting such a troublesome person the moment he had arrived. "My target is him. It has nothing to do with the Gu clan." The green-robed old man, who was called Gu Dao, smilingly shook his head upon hearing this. He said, "Haha, this won't do. Xiaoyan is considered half a member of the Gu clan. It is impossible for me to hand him over to you. Hunsha, you should hurry up and leave. Fighting in this place is disadvantageous to you." Xiaoyan was startled after seeing Gu Dao recognizing him upon sight. Since when did he become half a member of the Gu clan? "Little fellow, you have taken the opportunity to take Shun'er's virginity back in the demonic flame realm. Don't tell me that you intend to deny it." Gu Dao turned his head and spoke faintly, appearing as though he was aware of Xiaoyan's doubt. Xiaoyan widened his mouth. His face revealed a rare embarrassment. However, he quickly recovered and spoke in a deep voice. "Elder, the reason I have come to the Gu clan this time around is to inform your clan that the Yao clan had already been destroyed by the Hun clan. The culprit behind the extermination of the Ling and Shi clans is also them." The smile on Gu Dao's face diminished slowly. His eyes turned towards Hun Sha, and he softly said, "You are indeed the ones behind it." This news was quite shocking to him. However, he did not feel any sense of disbelief. After all, they had already made some guesses after those incidents had occurred. However, they did not have the evidence and were unable to prove their guess. The thing that caused him to be furious was that these people had actually struck again. "You are really full of nonsense. Relax. Your Gu clan will sooner or later meet the same fate as them." Hun Sha laughed coldly, but did not deny the claim. "I'm afraid that you do not have such a big appetite." Gu Dao frowned slightly. There was a chill surging within his voice. "One's appetite is not simply shown by using words." Hun Sha's laughed loudly. The bat wings behind him were flapped. The space fluctuated, and he directly appeared in front of Gu Dao. That blade was swung with a swoosh-swoosh sound. A sharp, blood-colored blade light engulfed Gu Dao. "Hun Sha, we have not exchanged blows for hundreds of years, but it seems that you have not made much improvement. If it is not because your 4 demon saints of the Hun clan rely on your numbers, my Gu clan's 3 immortals will not fear you even a little." Gu Dao merely laughed faintly in the face of the unusually sharp attack from Hun Sha. He clenched his hand, and 100 feet large green rod appeared in his hand. The rod danced, and the energy of this entire place was stirred. It turned into an endless number of ferocious rod shadows that collided with Hun Sha's blade glow. Clang, clang. The rod and blade clashed. An extremely shockingly sharp storm swept out from this seemingly ordinary clash. The space within radius, tens of thousands of feet in size, had been shaken until it shook intensely. Wild wind swept over the plains, sand flew and rock moved. Xiaoyan held Yao Ling and swiftly pulled back. He landed on a mountain before swiftly sitting down. The energy of the Tier 9 medicinal pill had already filled his body to the brim. If he did not think of a way to refine it, his body would sooner or later end up exploding. A Tier 9 mysterious pill is indeed not something that one can randomly swallow. Xiaoyan laughed bitterly. This was the first time that he had been turned into such a miserable state by a medicinal pill. Moreover, it was also the first time that he had a headache over having too much energy within his body. The seal formed by Xiaoyan's hands changed as he sat down. Little Yi immediately came out from within his body. It rapidly turned into a fire cauldron and wrapped his entire body within it. The purifying demonic lotus flame was finally completely unleashed. It surged into Xiaoyan's body from all directions and swiftly refined the seemingly real-like energy within his body, which had already turned into crystals. Without being attacked by an enemy, Xiaoyan was finally able to completely focus his mind on using all his strength to refine the energy crystals within his body. The effect of this all-out force had clearly brought about quite a great effect. The frightening strength of the purifying demonic lotus flame was once again unleashed. The crystals, which filled his veins, had swiftly turned into waves of torrent like pure energy under this continuous refinement. It whistled and galloped within Xiaoyan's body. His meridians, which had been fully blocked, had once again become loose. Swish, swish. The endless, vast and mighty energy was slowly circulated within Xiaoyan's meridians. Finally, it turned into powerful Do Qi, which merged into Xiaoyan's limbs. Immediately, a feeling of being completely filled once again rose within his heart. Moreover, the Do Qi within his body had vaguely showed signs of slowly soaring. The effect of the Tier 9 mysterious pill was slowly being unleashed at this moment, while Xiaoyan was making full use of his time to refine the shocking medicinal pill energy within his body. The battle in the sky was also becoming increasingly intense. Gu Dao and Hun Sha were the top experts from their respective clans. Moreover, they were at the 7-star Do Sheng class. The destructive force when they fought was naturally earth-shaking. However, it was unusually difficult for a victor to be decided. Damn it, why have I ended up meeting this old ghost? This is the territory of the Gu clan. Any large-scale battle will definitely attract the Gu clan's attention. At that time, if the other 2 Gu clan's 3 immortals were to come, he would likely have difficulty even retreating in one piece. A bloodlight that was tens of thousands of feet in size rose from the large ghost blade. However, it collapsed after being gently touched by Gu Qing's green rod. Hun Sha's brow was tightly knitted. I must end this battle as soon as possible. A fierce glow flashed across Hun Sha's eyes. The seal formed by his hands suddenly changed. That blood blade in his hand escaped, and a bloodlight erupted. Immediately, the blade swelled to 10,000 feet. The enormous blood blade was suspended in the sky with an evil aura that seemed to have a form gathered around it. Bloodlight surged over the blade, and his soul fluttered under this blade. Blood god tearing sky. The evil aura agglomerated over the blood blade. Hun Sha's eyes became cold. The blood blade rushed downwards, and a deafening sonic boom rumbled over the sky. The space within 100,000 feet collapsed as the blood blade passed. 100,000 feet, a large, deep gully had also appeared on the plains, tens of thousands of kilometers below. The gully was not wide, but it was deep to the point of appearing bottomless. Gu Dao's expression became grave as the blood blade rushed downwards. The green rod in his hand swelled rapidly before violently colliding with the blood blade. Bang! An indescribable, frightening wave swept over the sky. The plains, which was tens of thousands of kilometers large, had sunk by dozens of feet. Most of the mountains had collapsed and turned into dust. The destructive force from a fight between seven-star Daoshengs was actually this terrifying swoosh. The blood blade flew out, and its size rapidly shrunk. Finally, it swiftly shot towards the direction where Hun Sha's body was located. However, the blood blade was about to touch that figure when the latter suddenly disappeared. After image? Gu Dao's eyes suddenly shrunk. He rotated his gaze, only to see that Hun Sha had appeared in a flash on the mountain in the distance where Xiao Yan was at. That earth-shaking attack from earlier was merely a distraction that Hun Sha had used. His aim was still to capture Xiao Yan. Brat, I have said that you cannot escape. Hun Sha's body appeared in front of Xiao Yan in a ghost-like fashion. He grabbed with his hand, and the fire cauldron collapsed. However, Xiao Yan's tightly shut eyes were suddenly opened just as the former's hand was about to land on the top of his head. An aura that was many times stronger than earlier surged towards the sky. Dark clouds immediately churned, and there was a faint thunder resounding over the sky. 6-star Daosheng, you have actually refined a Tier 9 mysterious pill. Hun Sha's expression suddenly changed after detecting Xiao Yan's stronger aura. Murderous intent rose within his eyes. He not only did not slow, but has become even faster. Have a taste of this. Xiao Yan did not reveal the slightest fear in the face of this fatal strike by Hun Sha. He let out a cold laughter. Suddenly, golden dragon symbols surfaced on his arm. The thunderbolts flashing within the dark clouds in the sky dimmed after these dragon symbols appeared. It was as though they had met something terrifying. Something's wrong. Hun Sha glanced at the golden dragon symbol on Xiao Yan's arm, without knowing the reason. Hun Sha felt a little unease rising within his heart. However, it was already not in time for him to stop his attack at this moment. His palm wind became increasingly sharp as he ruthlessly smashed violently down from Xiao Yan's head. Go! A death god-like palm was rapidly being magnified in Xiao Yan's eyes. In the next instant, his arm suddenly trembled, and the golden dragon symbol suddenly erupted. Finally, it turned into a golden lightning that shot out from his finger at a speed, which was difficult to detect with his naked eye. Chi, the golden lightning, had collided with Hun Sha's palm in an instant. Immediately, the sharp wind on the latter's palm collapsed. The lightning easily penetrated through his palm. Bang! A great force that could not be resisted came striking at Hun Sha the moment the lightning struck his palm. His body flew backwards. A continuous stream of blood shot out from him. This Gu Dao, who had swiftly rushed over, was startled as he watched this scene. His eyes were filled with shock and uncertainty as he looked at the golden lightning that flashed from Xiao Yan's finger and struck its target. He could sense an energy that caused even his heart to palpitate from it. Bastard, what is that thing? Hun Sha's body was stabilized in the air in a somewhat miserable manner. He looked at the charred, black, bloody hole on his hand. His defense from earlier was completely useless. If that strike was directly aimed at his head, it was likely that even he would be seriously injured. Swoosh! Intense sound of rushing wind was suddenly transmitted from a short distance away, just as Hun Sha's expression had changed. Clearly, a large group of people were swiftly hurrying over. Xiao Yan, remember this. I will definitely make you repay for this 10 times over. Hun Sha clenched his teeth with great unwillingness. He also understood that he had lost his last opportunity. Immediately, he let out a vicious roar towards Xiaoyan before his body turned into a ray of black light that rushed into the distance. Xiaoyan indifferently looked at Hun Sha, who had disappeared into the distance. Only then did he slowly lift his arm. At this moment, his arm no longer possessed as feeling of the 9 mysterious golden lightning's strength. Even his current self was only able to barely control it.